The overall topic is presidential elections and an assassination. And we're going to talk about lots of different elections, and you're going to have to keep track of which election is which. As a result of that, I am going to let you use your notes on the test here. So it'd be very beneficial, because even for AP kids, it's difficult to keep these elections straight. But if you take good notes on the elections, you should have them really straight. You know what I'm saying? Now, this first election we're going to talk about of 1876 was probably the most unusual election in American history, because a president is going to be picked, not elected, which is really odd. But that's what happened, and we'll kind of explain that to you. So of all the elections we talk about, this is going to be the most important one to make sure you understand. So I would be gearing in here and taking really good notes. Okay? Now, who's the president right now? Do you remember? What? What did you say? Ulysses S. Grant. That's correct. Now, remember all the scandals that surrounded Ulysses S. Grant? That's going to come back, hopefully, for the Democrats and haunt the Republicans, because people remember the Republican President Ulysses S. Grant had a lot of problems. So the Democrats come into this election really confident that they're going to win because of the troubles that Grant had during his Republican presidency. Okay? So they nominate Governor Samuel J. Tilden of New York as their presidential candidate, the Democrats, because they're very confident of victory because of all the scandals during the Grant administration. And the Democrats nominate Governor Samuel J. Tilden of New York as their presidential candidate. And he's a pretty good choice, frankly.
That was the Democrats?
That's the Democrats. We're not even going to care. It's just because it just muddles down a heck of an election. I'm trying to keep you from having to remember too much. Now the Republicans are going to nominate Governor Rutherford B. Hayes of Ohio for the presidency. So the Democrats, Governor Samuel J. Tilden of New York. The Republicans, Governor Rutherford B. Hayes of Ohio. So this is a battle of governors. That's kind of unusual that you would have two governors battling for the presidency. Democrats, Governor Samuel J. Tilden of New York. Republicans, Governor Rutherford B. Hayes of Ohio. Yep. Now, as I mentioned, this is a crazy election. Crazy. And we have two different types of votes, don't we? Popular votes and electoral votes. And which ones count? Electoral. But we'll give you some information. So, Governor Tilden, the Democrat, receives 250,000 more popular votes than Rutherford B. Hayes does. Governor Tilden receives 250,000 more popular votes than Governor Hayes. So Tilden wins the popular vote by 250,000 votes. But we all know, especially because of this last election, when Hillary Clinton had more than 2 million more popular votes than President Trump, that it's the Electoral College that counts. Okay? Now, when they counted the electoral votes, Tilden also won 184 to 165. So when they counted the electoral votes, Tilden also won 184 to 165. But since none of you have heard of President Samuel J. Tilden, something must have happened, right? And your thought is? Maybe he didn't have the 2/3 majority? Is that what you're thinking too? Tilden was one electoral vote short of 2/3 majority. One stinking vote short. So what ordinarily happens, kiddos, if you don't have the 2/3 majority? Goes to the House, right? Well, that was kind of crazy too, because when they did some checking, they found out, believe it or not, that 4 states sent in 2 sets of returns. 4 of the states didn't send in 1 set of returns, they sent in 2. So in that case, what would you do before you went to the House? You'd have a recount. Very good. And of these 4 states, there were 20 electoral votes in those 4 states. So with these 4 states that are going to have a recount, there's 20 electoral votes up for grabs. How many does Tilden need? 1. Just so happened that Rutherford B. Hayes needed all 20. He needed all 20. So because of this recount, there are 20 crucial electoral votes up for grabs. Tilden only needs 1. Hayes needs every single one. Now, according to the United States Constitution, all of these votes are going to have to be counted again. 1, 2, 3. Now, let's think about that. Are they just going to say, go ahead and count them and let us know? No, they're going to have to oversee it. Somebody's going to have to oversee this recount to make sure there's no funny business. Because it's pretty crucial, right? Because Tilden only needs 1, and Hayes needs all 20. So Congress created something that was called the Electoral Commission. Congress created the Electoral Commission. And what was the job of the Electoral Commission? To oversee this recount. And they put 15 members, 15 people on this Electoral Commission. What type of people would they put on that thing? That are pretty important people.
Neutral.
Well, that's going to try to be neutral. What, like who? What type of, who though? Position-wise?
Senators.
Senators. Who else would they put on there? The opposite side of Congress is representatives. So they're going to have some senators, and they're going to have some representatives, members of the House. But what else might they put? Who's higher than them other than the president? Very good, yeah. The Supreme Court. So here's how this committee put, there's 15, right? 5 will be United States senators. 5 will be members of the House of Representatives. And 5 will be justices of the Supreme Court. 5 senators, 5 representatives, 5 justices of the Supreme Court. So somebody back there, it was either Donovan or Dylan, said that we want somebody that's, what did you say, neutral? Well, how are we going to determine, how are we going to make sure these 15 are neutral? Because each one is a member of what? They're a member of a party. So now you got to break down and make sure there's an equal number of Republicans as there is Democrats. So listen to this. Here's the Electoral Commission, right? 15 people, 5 United States senators, 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. You gotta know that. As far as the senators went, 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. So how did the House go? 2 Democrats, 3 Republicans.
Wait.
Or no, 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans. So it's even, right? Well, what about these Supreme Court justices? How's that going to work? They're going to pick 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and 1 man who has not chosen a political party. A nonpartisan, they call it. A guy that never declared a party. So, again, you're going to have 5 senators, 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. You're going to have 5 representatives, 2 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and then you're going to have 5 Supreme Court justices, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 1 that has claimed and legally is nonpartisan. Okay? Should make it even.
How do you spell that?
Nonpartisan?
Mm-hmm.
Nonpartisan. Now, the nonpartisan member of the Supreme Court was Justice David Davis, who's on your ID sheet. He's the non-partial, non-partisan justice. David Davis. They're hard to come by. There's not many people that can claim non-partisan legally, but he could, okay? He could. So they're going to oversee this recount. Well, this is interesting because before the recount, guess what happens? David Davis is elected to the United States Senate. And so he resigned his position as a Supreme Court justice. So they got to find someone to replace him now. That's neutral. And guess what? There isn't another Supreme Court justice that's neutral. You're either going to have to pick a Democrat or a Republican. No, this is where it gets weird. Because they didn't feel like they could do a recount, they just, both the Democrats and Republican, agreed to make Rutherford B. Hayes president.
Why?
I'm going to tell you that. It's a good question. So the Democrats, because they can't see this ever coming out correctly, the Democrats agree to allow the Republican candidate, Rutherford B. Hayes, to be named President of the United States. Why would they do that, Elizabeth?
I don't know. That's why I asked.
Why would you allow me to give a test without a review if I promised you? What might you do to a deal? What would Elizabeth get in return for that? What are the Democrats going to get in return for allowing a Republican candidate to become president? Well, they're going to be given these three things. So the Democrats agreed to allow Rutherford B. Hayes, the Republican, to become president under the three following conditions. This is shortly after what? And there's still Union troops in the South keeping track of things, and the South's getting sick and tired of that. And where are most Democrats from? South. So the first part of the deal is all those Union troops that are in the South will now be withdrawn and taken out back into the North. So there'll be no more Southern troops. What are Union troops? What are these Union troops doing, Outlaw Josie Wales? We showed you that, didn't we? They're trying to round up these renegades, aren't they still, even in 1876? And they're keeping track of what's going on in the South. And the South's sick of these people. And so that was the first part of it. Yeah, we'll let Hayes be president, but you got to withdraw all federal troops out of the South forever. Yeah.
Would they send them money?
You're close. What is there no, she's very close. What's there no longer in the South because of the destruction afterwards? Main thing.
Really?
Who said it? Railroads. Is that you? Yes. So the second part of the deal is the North would agree not only to build, but finance or pay for a railroad back across the South. Boy, did they need that or what, Elizabeth? They did need it. They couldn't afford it. So they said, yeah, we'll let Rutherford B. Hayes be the president, but you got to pay for and build a new railroad line across the South. And what else would Southern Democrats want when Hayes became president? Because what's he going to put together when he becomes president? Yeah, what are they going to want in that cabinet? A fair share of what? Southerners. Okay? So, the Democrats agree to accept Rutherford B. Hayes as president under the following three conditions. Number one, all federal troops that were located in the South would be withdrawn. Number two, Hayes would agree to appoint a fair share of Southerners into his presidential cabinet. But most importantly, something they would have never gotten done with Samuel Tilden as president was getting the North to not only agree to build, but pay for a railroad across the South. And that turned out to be a pretty good deal for the South. You think about what the Southern Democrats that are making this deal, they're never going to get Union troops out under Tilden, are they? No. They might get a fair share of Southerners in the cabinet because he's from the South. but they're never going to get a railroad built and paid for by the North in a million years. This is why they make the deal. And because of this deal, Rutherford B. Hayes becomes the 19th President of the United States, despite the fact, kiddos, that his opponent won a majority of both the popular and electoral votes. Rutherford B. Hayes.
The 19th?
19th.
I don't remember.
You know, that's a good question. I've not researched that, but my feeling is that Tilden wanted to do what was best for the Southern Democrats, and that railroad was huge. They would have never gotten a railroad back across it, and that's why they made the deal, really. Now, what's that? Yeah, Hayes becomes the 19th president. Despite the fact he won both the popular vote and the electoral vote. Poor son of a gun was one vote short, and we'd have heard of his President Tilden, but it didn't happen. Okay. All right, let me give you some just kind of fun facts. 6 fun facts about Rutherford B. Hayes. Kind of 6 fun facts. President Hayes' wife was the first lady in history to have a college degree. Rutherford B. Hayes' wife was the first lady to have a college degree. President Hayes and his wife had 8 children. That's one of the most, if not the most, number of children a president had. He had 8 children. The president and his wife had 8 children. Yeah, world record for children in the White House. 8. You ever heard of Ohio State University? President Hayes founded it. He founded Ohio State University. The Buckeyes. Here's kind of I think you'll like this. Mrs. Hayes, the First Lady, had the nickname Lemonade Lucy. Her name was Lucy Hayes. They called her Lemonade Lucy. Why? Why would they call her that?
Because she drank lemonade?
She's sweet. That's a good. She drank lemonade. Yeah, that's not true, but why do they call her Lemonade Lucy?
Because she was selling it?
Huh?
I don't know. Because she was selling it? Like did she curse a lot?
No. If you come into somebody's home or into the White House, what offered it instead of, she was very much against alcohol. She would not allow alcohol in the White House. And usually you would call someone that doesn't drink alcohol, they drink lemonade. So her name became Lemonade Lucy because she refused to allow any alcohol whatsoever in the White House, which was a big change from the Ulysses S. Grant years. Not a drunkard, but didn't mind drinking a little. And the people he had around him, like Philip Sheridan and William T. Sherman, his buddies, were big drinkers. So he had tons of alcohol in the White House. Mrs. Hayes would allow none, and so they referred to her as Lemonade Lucy. President Hayes was the first president of the United States to have a telephone in the White House. He was the first president of the United States to have a telephone in the White House, thanks to Alexander Graham Bell. Okay? Who invented the telephone? Anybody know when? 1876. Okay, so President Hayes was the first U.S. president to have a telephone in the White House. Hey, you ever heard of the Easter egg roll? The president has the Easter egg roll at the White House every year. Mrs. Hayes was the one that started that tradition. I'll tell you that tomorrow. Of the Easter egg roll. All right, good job, kiddos. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Following students have items and messages in the office. Sunny Weaver, Anthony Martinez, Peyton Wolfenden, and Tristan Lundgren. Please come to the office. Sunny Weaver, Anthony Martinez, Peyton Wolfenden, and
First time I've ever done
Tristan
that in
Lundgren.
40 years.
I was very disappointed.